Hello everyone, welcome to Internet Law Review. For today's story, we are here covering an ongoing outage at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, Day 6, that is dramatically impacting the ability of the patent side of the Patent Office to do its work. So this does not impact the trademark side of the office. So if you're interested in trademarks, determining the status of trademarks and the like, this does not impact you. This only impacts the patent side of the office. Unfortunately for the United States Patent and Trademark Office, however, the patent side of the office is the more dominant side of the office. There are about 700 trademark examiners. So these are 700 professionals whose job it is to do the research on a trademark application to determine whether or not the name is in use, whether or not the name is unique, whether or not there are any conflicts, to determine how conflicts should be resolved. There's 700 people to do that work to determine whether or not a new trademark should or should not be granted. And while there are 700 trademark examiners doing that work, there are about 9,100 patent examiners doing that work. So 9,100 patent examiners doing the research, determining whether or not there are conflicts, looking at the prior art, looking at conflicts, and trying to determine whether or not a patent should be issued. So the patent side of the office, as you can tell from the numbers, is by far and away the more dominant side of the USPTO. So this is impacting the USPTO's critical mission in a very core way, and we're going to cover a little bit about that and what's going on. So this involves the PALM database. We'll cover a little bit about what that means in a second. But first, of more interest perhaps, is the systems that it's impacting, and we're going to go over this list. So this list that I'm looking at right now and referring to is from uspto.gov. This is from the USPTO's official internet webpage, so this is from the office itself, so you can rely on this as being authoritative. And as the office points out, because the PALM database is down, the following systems are down, and these systems have been down for 6 days now. The electronic filing system. The electronic filing system is the system that allows people to file new applications. So if you're interested in filing a new application, the office has an electronic filing system. At the moment, that system is down. Now, as you can see in a higher paragraph, there are some contingency systems that are available. The electronic filing system web contingency, for example. However, the ability of those systems to function has been questioned, at least by public blogs on this subject. There are people that question whether or not those systems are reliable. And if I were you, I would suggest perhaps finding alternative means of filing, even though those means are slightly more inconvenient. Your best alternative here would be U.S. mail or just mail in general, or fax, because the USPTO still accepts fax applications. So U.S. mail, if possible, would be preferable. Otherwise, fax would be suggested. But at the moment, your ability to file them electronically is dramatically impacted. There are alternative tools, but I would suggest perhaps considering U.S. mail instead of the alternative tools, because nothing can go wrong with U.S. mail, right? So you should probably go there. The Electronic Freedom of Information Act. There's a law in the United States, the Freedom of Information Act, that allows you to obtain government records that are not otherwise commonly available. So you can ask for documentation or that might otherwise not be readily available. So there's a law that governs that, and the electronic system would allow you to file that, check on the status of that. So at the moment, you can't file electronic requests for open records. You can't obtain the open records from previous requests, either yours or your own, or of those of other people, because any record that has been granted is an open record. So you can look up the FOIA requests of other people and see the associated documentation, but at the moment, the electronic system for filing open records requests is not available. The electronic patent assignment system. An assignment is a fancy name for a financial interest or an ownership interest. So for those of you who have ever bought a house, you're probably well familiar with the idea of a title search, and there's a title office in your city that determines who owns a piece of real property. So when you talk about who owns the title to a house, that can be determined by looking at the records from the title office, and that keeps a record of who owns property. And so the same thing is true for patent records. There's a centralized office in the patent office that determines who owns patent records or owns patent interests. So if you sell your patent to someone else or sell your patent application to someone else that maintains that record, or if someone has a financial interest in your application or your patent. So for example, if you're an inventor and you're short on money, you might say, well, I'd like to sell you this patent, or I'd like to sell you an ownership in this interest on this patent or this application. If it ever becomes a patent, you'll get 10% of the value of whatever gets granted. So that would keep a record of those transactions. So there's a clear record of who owns the patent or any piece of it. And at the moment, you can't determine that. There's the electronic system to determine ownership interest is at the moment unavailable. The employee locator search, this is a system that allows you to find out who are employees at the patent office, to find their contact information. At the moment, you can't determine who is an employee of the patent office. The global dossier. The global dossier is a centralized system that allows you to obtain information on patents from other countries. Now of course, these records would still be available from those countries themselves, including from their online portals. But those portals are sometimes not written in a style that would be familiar to American users. They're written in a style that would be more familiar to their native population, and so sometimes they're cumbersome to use from a U.S. perspective. And also, of course, sometimes they're written in a foreign language. So your ability to use those foreign systems to obtain those records exists, but it's cumbersome in some cases. To solve that problem, the U.S. government created a centralized system that allows one interface in English to obtain records from any of its partners, and its partners include all the major patent granting countries. So a patent anywhere in the world of any value or note would be obtainable in this global system. And at the moment, that global system is down, so you can't determine or obtain patent records from other countries using the centralized system. The Office of Enrollment and Discipline Information System. The OED is the office that determines who is and who is not a patent attorney. To become an attorney in the United States, you have to become registered before your state to become an attorney. So if you want to become an attorney, you have to get a license to practice before a particular state. However, to be a patent attorney, not only do you have to be a regular attorney, but you also have to get permission from the Patent and Trademark Office itself. So to call yourself a patent attorney or to be a patent attorney, you have to get registered before the United States Patent and Trademark Office as a patent attorney. And the Office of Enrollment and Discipline is the one that determines that. So if you're interested in determining if the guy on the street that comes up to you really is a patent attorney, at the moment you can't do that because the electronic system is down. You can't determine whether or not someone has been suspended or expelled from practice. And you can't become newly registered as a patent attorney because the system is down, and you can't enter new judgments against someone. So the Office of Enrollment and Discipline is at the moment unable to flag patent attorneys who've been disciplined as being disciplined because their system is down. So not that it matters anyway from your perspective because you couldn't check it in the first place, but obviously that is a problem in terms of maintaining those records. The Order Entry Management System. The Order Entry Management System deals with orders, primarily judicial orders, in terms of any order that has been issued to the office in terms of how to manage a particular patent if there's been some sort of judicial process where the office has been sued or there's otherwise been a order from a court. That's how that system is maintained. So at the moment, the United States Patent Office is unable to process judicial orders that impact its ability to do work. So that's just great. The One Portal Dossier and the Patent Global Dossier, Public Access Dossier are similar to Global Dossier for global patent records. At the moment, those systems are down. The patent maintenance fees storefront. Patent maintenance fees are fees you have to pay on a periodic basis to maintain a patent. Patents are granted for 20 years, but in order to maintain your patent once it's granted, in order to actually get all 20 years, you have to pay maintenance fees at particular intervals. If you don't pay those fees, you lose the rest of your term. So it's 20 years if you pay your fees, If you don't pay your fees, it's significantly shorter than that. At the moment, your ability to pay your maintenance fees is dramatically compromised because the electronic system to accept those fees is down. The Private Patent Application Information Retrieval System, also known as Private PAIR. Private PAIR is the system that allows a patent attorney who is representing a particular client or that client themselves, or a pro se if a person's representing themselves. This is the system that allows them to obtain their entire patent file. This is the thing that allows them to see all the private information for things that are ongoing. Patents, once they're granted, are public, but when they're ongoing, they are more private, and certain information is kept from the public during that because it's an ongoing process. But if you're the client, or you're the patent attorney representing the client, you of course have the right to see the entire case file, because that allows you to do your job in terms of advancing your interests before the office. You have a right to see everything on the patent side in terms of everything they're doing and respond to it accordingly. But at the moment, you can't get that information because the system is down. The public patent application information system is similar to the private system, but of course more restricted because it's available to the public. So this would be the public version of that. There's not much difference if it's a granted patent. Granted patents are in the open, and that's what the word patent actually literally means. The word patent literally means open. So the public system for patents that have been granted is open in terms of its records. For ongoing applications, they're more restricted, but your ability to obtain those records or obtain that case file is dramatically compromised because the system to obtain those records is down. The patent review processing system is a system that allows for patent review relating to patent trials and appeals. And the Patent Trial and Appeal Board is the internal appeal system for if you are unhappy with the result of the patent examiner who reviewed your application. If he denied your application, you have a right to appeal. There's an internal appeal before a judicial appeal. So when you first appeal, it's inside the office to the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, who makes a first determination as to whether or not the patent examiner erred, and can make that determination before moving into court. But at the moment, your ability to file patent appeals or determine whether or not appeals have been granted, or to deal with that status, to interact with that process for an ongoing appeal, you can't do that electronically. So this PALM database being down is dramatically impacting the patent office in terms of its work. So we're going to cover a little bit about this PALM outage, but before I cover that, I also want to cover a little bit about the internal tools to the office, because all the tools that I just mentioned are external tools, which makes sense because this is USPTO.gov's public-facing webpage. So the information that they're providing to the public is information that the public would be most readily concerned about, which is the tools that the public interacts with. But this outage is also impacting the tools that are available to internal customers, to the patent office itself, to the patent examiners. The PALM database outage is also impacting the ability for patent examiners to do their work. So it's dramatically impacting the ability for patent examiners to create new office actions, to process new office actions, which is just the fancy name for the official response from the patent office. So they can't write up their official response. They can't send out their official response. So it's dramatically impacting the ability for patent examiners to do their primary function. So this has been a major problem for the patent office internally, because they have 9,100 patent examiners who have been dramatically reduced in terms of their efficiency. In some cases reduced to twiddling their thumbs, more or less, and there are 9,100 people who have been impacted to varying degrees of severity because of their internal tools. And in any case, the patent office is not able to mail out new office actions relating to patents, so they can't keep the flow relating to the patent examination process going. So it is dramatically impacting the internal tools of the patent office as well, the office creation tools and similar tools like that. So that's worthy of mention. So what is going on here, you might want to know. Well, what is happening is the centralized database of the patent office, again, this is the patent side of the USPTO, just patents, but again, that's the dominant side of the office. The centralized database, PALM, the Patent Application Locating and Monitoring Database, is the centralized database of the Patent Office. So this is the database that maintains and keeps records of all the patent applications, both current and in the past, any patent application in terms of its case history. So this goes well back into the Patent Office's history. So if you want to look up historical records for historical patents, and see their entire prosecution history in terms of all the documentation that went backwards and forwards, and all the records relating to how that patent came to be, that would be maintained in the patent application system. And it also deals with ongoing applications. It deals with the current work of the office in terms of those case files. So the patent application location and monitoring database is the centralized database that maintains all the records relating to ongoing applications and granted patents. So because of that, you can see readily why that would dramatically impact the ability of patent examiners to do their work, because they can't see the case file. They can't see the record of what has happened before. And that would be obviously of great import as they're doing their work to figure out what happened before, so that the patent examiner could respond accordingly. So all the tools that were mentioned are tools that are working against this centralized database PALM. And what's of interest or of note is that the PALM database is well archaic. This is not a secret to anyone who knows anything about the Patent Office. The PALM database was encoded and created decades ago. I couldn't tell you an exact date for it off the top of my head, but suffice to say that this centralized database was created, let's say 20 years ago, give or take. Don't quote me on that exact number, but something in that neighborhood. So this database that the Patent Office relies on was written 20 years ago. And my understanding of it, again, this is based on what my understanding is, so it may not be correct, but my understanding of it is that it was written in a fairly obscure computing language that not many people know about, and was encoded in such a way that made it extremely difficult to be updated or maintained. And as a result of that, the patent database structure, the software of it, has been more or less not updated in the 20 years it's been created. And you can readily see why that would be a significant problem. Not for the least of reasons that the amount of patent work that the Patent Office is doing has dramatically increased in the last 20 years. The amount of employees the Patent Office has employed in 20 years has dramatically increased. There are way more employees at the Patent Office than there were 20 years ago, because there are way more patents and filings than there were 20 years ago. So this tool that was created 20 years ago, give or take, to deal with this centralized system has not been maintained or updated to deal with the increased workflow. And there have been outages of PALM on an ongoing basis for quite a while now. Now, normally these outages only last for a day or part of a day, but every time this outage occurs, it is very disruptive to the office and its work, because the office has a huge volume. There are 9,100 examiners working just as fast as they can, because there's a massive backlog of applications. There are way more applications coming through the door than the amount of work that 9,100 people can do. So even though the office is big in terms of its employees, there are not enough employees to do the work of the Patent Office, despite the fact that the patent employees are extremely efficient at their work. Their efficiency grows year to year. These are all trackable numbers, because the Patent Office is probably the most quantifiable office of any agency in the entire U.S. government, because it's very easy to calculate how much work is being done, because it's very calculable in terms of what work is being done. So it's very measurable whether or not how patent employees are doing, and their efficiency has grown dramatically year over year, and the amount of work they're doing is growing year after year, and the amount of employees there are has grown year after year. But even though the employees are more numerous, and even though they are more efficient, the amount of applications that are coming through the door is still more than the employees are able to handle. The United States Patent Office literally cannot hire enough people to do the work of the patent office because it requires such a specialized knowledge to do. For all the criticism of the patent office that is granted, some of that criticism is legitimate and others is not. But the office is very sensitive to that, and because of that, they're looking for fairly high quality talent, and finding high quality talent in this field is difficult. So they can't find enough employees to do the work. But any disruption in this Palm database is hugely disruptive, because the office works on a flow, and any disruption in the flow hurts this already ongoing process. So the the fact that this has been going on for 6 days is a dramatic impact to the office. The financial implications of this is somewhat difficult to immediately calculate, but you've got 9,100 employees who are making significant salaries, who are dramatically impacted in terms of their efficiency. So the cost of this in terms of just financial cost, and cost of this in terms of time, which is probably the most important cost actually to the public, is actually really dramatic. So this is a huge problem. This centralized database is down since 4:30 in the morning on August 15th, and it's still down as of 8 in the morning on the 21st. So it's been 6 days that the system has been down. They have a system going on continuously to try to fix it. And they do have a statement regarding whether or not this was malicious activity. As you can see here, they say that this results from an internal system failure and is not the result of external causes. There's a statement from the director, the head of the office. This is the undersecretary of the office. On this subject, that says that's an internal problem rather than an external problem. Truth be told, I'm somewhat inclined to believe the director on this issue, because there have certainly been rumors of external breaches in the past. I can't validate whether or not any of those rumors are true, but there have been rumors that in the past external actors have caused issues with the Palm database. But I have very little trouble believing that this is an internal issue, because this is a 20-year-old database. This is a database that was completely not designed to deal with the issues that there are now. There's just way more applications, way more examiners, way more things going on, and the database simply cannot handle it. So, the database itself, just what really needs to happen here fundamentally is the database itself needs to be replaced. I don't know how difficult or not that would be. The fact that this has been an ongoing problem for years, if not decades, suggests it's harder than it is. But, I think that the patent application location monitoring database, as I said, my understanding is it's written in this really old language. No one knows the ability to. But, what I would try to do, if it's possible, is simply rebuild it from scratch. I wouldn't worry about trying to save any of the old code. I wouldn't worry about that at all. I just rebuild it from square one in a modern language. This database has been having calls made against it, for years to try to get access to the data. So the data is there, it is retrievable. So one would imagine that you could design a new piece of software which mission in life would just simply be give me every record ever in this database. If do it one at a time if you have to, but give me every record, and then from those records, populate that into some kind of new database. So you would imagine it would be just as simple as give me the record, and here's the record, and let me now put that record into a new database that's been recoded from scratch in a new language that's more easily updated. So it's a little bit unclear to me why that's not possible. My background is in computer science, so I say this with some knowledge on the subject, that it's a little bit difficult for me to understand why that's not possible. But I don't know the particulars of how this database is structured. And so while it seems to me it should be possible, the fact that it's so ongoing suggests it's not. I don't know why it's not possible, but Palm as such is completely inadequate to the task. I don't think anyone would deny that. It is not capable of dealing with the volume or the work that is currently ongoing. We have the office has a decentralized workforce. There are examiners working from every state in the lower 48. There's a huge work at home presence from the patent office, which is to the benefit of the public. The public is saving millions and millions and millions of dollars on office costs, and also it's good for employee morale. But there's all these employees who are trying to obtain information from all over the country, and this database is it was never designed for that. It was never designed for that. When the system was designed, there was a much smaller centralized office, much smaller applications, and now there's a huge decentralized office with way more applications, way more work, and it was never designed for this. So the Palm database simply has to be replaced. One way or another, it has to be replaced. And these issues have been notable in the past. This is the longest continuous outage of the Palm database that I can recall in recent memory. But these issues are not unique, and this issue will be ongoing until this is ultimately resolved. I think that the solution here is clear. The Palm database has to be corrected. So that's what's going on in the patent office. As of this morning, the 21st at 8 a.m., the system was still down. It's been said it will be available tomorrow on the 22nd. One can only hope. But this has been a huge problem, and it's an ongoing problem for everyone on the patent side of the patent office. So that's a little bit of what's going on at the patent office, and it's disruptive, and I can only hope that the patent office will make rebuilding Palm a primary focus, because unless that centralized system is fixed, all the other systems that depend on it are somewhat irrelevant. It is the centralized system. It has to be the system that's most robust, and the fact that it has been allowed to go on this long is somewhat disappointing, and hopefully the office will address that going forward. Well, that's all for now on this subject. I hope this was a helpful review of what's going on at the patent office on this major disruption. Again, this has been Internet Law Review. It's been nice talking with you, and I hope you're well. Until later, my friends. Cheers. Bye.